Buonasera, we are live. Welcome back to the Monday night webinars. PandeMedia in a lockdown age. So welcome back to the 7th episode of this series to make sense of what's going on out there, to really explore what matters to us in this state of isolation, and so understanding the global village around us. There is a special guest tonight with me, my son Frank. Say hi, Frank. All right. So I see you are connecting, so feel free to say hi. We are live streaming on the Marshall McLuhan's Facebook page and on the YouTube, the McLuhan Institute YouTube channel. And by the way, thank you, Andrew McLuhan, for hosting us. Thank you for hosting the live streaming on the YouTube channel, the McLuhan Institute. So you are very, very welcome to say hi on the Facebook group. I see you are connecting. Of course, Alex Kuskis, the mind behind the McLuhan Galaxy blog, the official repository for everything all about McLuhan. And so thank you, Alex, for also providing biographies and many other information about the Monday night webinars. So Frank, I think it's time to go back. All right? Okay, say hi.
Frankly, I do not agree with this. I meant to say merely.
All right, I love it. Ciao, please close the door. All right. So we have a special surprise and many other surprises tonight. In the meantime, let me say hi to my friend Bob, and then Steve, Elaine. Elaine will be with us in the following weeks. And then Ray Daly from Vienna, USA. And thank you for saying he's adorable. And by the way, Facebook user, in order to, that's a practical and very important comment. In order to comment on our live streaming, you should authorize StreamYard, which is our broadcasting platform, to grab your name and photo profile. So otherwise you will look like an anonymous user. Instead, just visit streamyard.com/Facebook and you will magically show up, because technically we are live streaming on a private Facebook group, okay? And then you can even comment from the YouTube channel. All right. Then what's going on here from Facebook? And feel free to say hi, Rutan Robel. Good evening, Paolo and Frank. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So I know you are connecting. I usually spend a few minutes to let you connect and warm up a little bit before introducing our special guests for tonight. Every Monday night we have a tremendous lineup of friends and colleagues and scholars in the field of McLuhan studies and media ecology. So even tonight we have a very, very nice lineup. John Caputo from Gonzaga, Spokane, Washington. Thank you. And again, another anonymous user, be reminded to please grant StreamYard permission to grab your name and comment. So just visit streamyard.com/Facebook. Okay, if you are on Facebook, please just type streamyard.com/Facebook and you will be with us as your real name and so on. All right. I think so. We are warming up. A few announcements. So let me start with a few announcements before introducing our special guest. First announcement, as usual, next Monday, as every Monday night, we will have another Monday night seminar, so webinar. So Monday, June the 15th, Alessandro Colombi from Italy, Sandra Danilovic from Toronto, somewhere, Ontario, Adam Lauder from Toronto, and Jean-François Vallet from Montreal. And by the way, Jean-François, I don't know if you are there. Happy birthday, folks! Feel free to cheer. It's. I think a little bird told me that it's Jean-François' birthday today. So happy birthday, Jean-François! And we're looking forward to seeing you next Monday. Okay, we will cheer again. But in the meantime, very happy birthday from all of us. Okay. And by the way, this is a nice community of people in the field of McLuhan's scholarship, the media ecology scholarship. It's nice to gather all together every Monday night. We need to, right? We needed to balance this sense of isolation and emergency, right? With the sense of togetherness. Replace isolation with togetherness. We are fostering the idea that together we are stronger. And of course, everything that's in this moment is a kind of intensifier. So we feel the intensity of what's going on around us. And let me say a few words about the George Floyd's murder, the I Can't Breathe movement. So it's not time to be silent. It's time to really do more, right? To end the anti-Black racism, to end this kind of police brutality. And so as a community, right, we are stronger if we stand for what really matters to us. And today, in this moment, in this particular historical moment, I wanted to bring up this crucial topic to really face this situation. And so it's also important to gather our thoughts as scholars, experts, friends, and to really focus on what matters. And we will have another chance for doing that in a month, in July the 20th. And so here is another announcement for you all, my friends. Let me just put this up. Here we are, July the 20th, Global Village Day, a McLuhanesque marathon to explore the post-pandemic world. This is going to be from noon to midnight. So I told you, it's a 12-hour McLuhanesque marathon. And again, so you all are invited to share this 12 hours marathon all across the world, because we will have guests from Japan, from China, from Russia, Europe, of course, and then North America, South America. So the whole planet will celebrate the Global Village. It's going to be July the 20th from noon to midnight Toronto time, because at midnight, just crossing to the July 21st, we will celebrate the Marshall McLuhan's birthday. And so save the date, again, Global Village Day, July the 20th, live on YouTube and Facebook, to celebrate the McLuhanesque post-pandemic Global Village. Okay? Save the date. Thank you. And so it's 10 p.m. So it's time to get started. Finally, let me just say, all right, here we are. Firstly, Andrew and the McLuhan Institute. Hi, everyone. It's nice to have you here, Andrew, and thank you for your support again. I have a few friends, and Jean-François, my birthday today. Yes, ongoing celebrations. We will celebrate you, absolutely. Julia Hildebrand is joining us again, and she will join us in a few weeks, I think, in a Monday night webinar. So Julia, I really look forward to having you here, right, in this community of friends. And by the way, friends, feel free to say hi hi and tell us where you are, who you are, and where you are. It's the physical location is important to foster that sense of togetherness. So feel free to share where are you, uh, your country, your city, whatever. So, but it's important. So we want to again foster the sense of togetherness and share with a nice community of friends and colleagues some thoughts. Okay. Tampa Bay. I didn't know there was a Tampa Bay. So thank you, Julia. Final announcement, and then we get started to introducing our special guests. So again, if you are following us on Facebook, on the Marshall McLuhan's Facebook group, please grant StreamYard the permission to get your name and photo profile. No concerns in terms of privacy settings, nothing. Just your name and profile, so you will show up on. So we can take your comment and show it up on live. So go on streamyard.com/Facebook. Great. And I have a few other announcements, but later tonight I will reveal my surprises and my secrets. In the meantime, Clinton, welcome. Thank you for coming back. Rhea Beaumont, she was a special guest a few weeks ago. Thank you, Rhea, for coming back. Daniel, Hermano, greetings from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And this, of course, it's a clue for our first special guest tonight. And of course, the Sal Greco, the great Sal. Thank you for joining us even tonight. All right, time to get started, and I will be introducing our first guest. But in the meantime, feel free to keep sharing your comments, keep sharing your cheers, and particularly to welcome and join me welcoming our special guests for tonight. And so let's get started. 8:13, running slightly late, but it's time to, and it's a great pleasure actually. We start with international guest tonight. We have a few international, let's say, but international guest outside Canada. It's a tenured professor at the Media and Cultural Studies Department, a graduate program in communication at Fluminense Federal University in Rio de Janeiro. She is currently a visiting professor. She just ended her visiting professorship at McGill University into the Department of Social Communication Sciences and Humanities. And she has been developing a special research project. Maybe we will inquire a little bit about that. Electronic music scenes and social network sites, feminine invisibility in Brazil and Canada. And among many other publications, she authored a book titled Identity Dynamics and Social Network Sites, a study with participants of electronic music scenes on Facebook, published in Portuguese in 2014. So we look forward to an English edition of your book. So, my friends, folks from Facebook and YouTube, join me welcome with a round of applause, virtually a round of applause, Beatriz from Rio de Janeiro. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Paolo. This was a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much indeed for this opportunity to talk to everybody and be together despite the distance.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, talking about the introduction and biographies, we need to thank Alex Kuskis from the McLuhan Galaxy blog. So he is a curator for everything related to the backstage of these events. So thank you very much, Alex, for your support. And so, Beatriz, are you right now in Rio de Janeiro, right? Or somewhere in the area, I think.
Yes, I'm actually in Rio de Janeiro right now. So I returned from Montreal, from Canada in March, just before the pandemic started. It was just 10 days after it started. I was already here, but then it was the whole thing that we have been living now. So I had the perfect timing. I had 1 year at McGill University and it was a very nice experience. And I'm glad that I could profit from it instead of being just inside home in Montreal. That wouldn't be so interesting.
Absolutely. I'm very curious to know what you learned in Montreal, your experiences. And what are you learning, the lessons you are learning from this current situation? I suspect the coming back to Brazil was a shock for many
Yes.
reasons, for the beginning of the pandemic, for how Brazil is doing in this moment, and many other things. So I think the lessons you are learning are very important. I mean, in a moment of crisis, we need to learn, we need to make sense of what's going on around us, right?
Perfect.
Okay, Beatriz. So I will complete the first merry-go-round introducing our guests, and I will be back to you in a little while. Okay, very shortly.
Great.
Thank you,
See you.
Beatriz, and I'll
Thank
see you
you.
later. Ciao,
Thank
ciao.
you.
Thank you. And here we are. And by the way, I didn't say hi to my twin brother there. This is meaningful. So I wanted to provide you with a backstage view, right? So it's a way to be more intimate, right? So this gathering every Monday night aims at really bringing a sense of friendly and welcoming way of discussing what's going on around us. In the meantime, I wanted to say hi to the great Bob Logan from Toronto. Hello, Bob. He was with us for a few weeks ago for the Monday Night webinars, and many other friends who are not yet granted permission for the Facebook comments. So be reminded to grant permission. StreamYard.com/Facebook, and you will not look like an anonymous Facebook user. And talking about, from Brazil, Rio again, Guilherme Cunha. Hello, Guilherme. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. And I wanted to say just a few words about the... okay, let me say hi to Alfonso. Great. Alfonso of Cleveland. Just a few words about my friend Junichi from Japan will join us, Junichi Miyazawa, and he told me that Monday night, without the T, Monday night in Japanese means no problem. And so we are renaming the Monday night webinars as the No Problem webinars. Okay, so thank you, Junichi, for this suggestion, and eventually this is a no problem webinars to celebrate again our love of dialogue and sharing and conversation. We wanted to really retrieve the value of conversation in this particular moment. And so hello Gracie from Brazil. So a lot from Brazil. Wow. Thank you. I'm very, very honored. Thank you. And Andrew, in fact, is here. Bob is watching on YouTube. Okay, thank you. And by the way, so feel free to share your questions, your comments. You know, it's a very intimate and engaging gathering of friends. Okay, please keep commenting. So sometimes I will bring your comments on air or online live. All right, let's move on to our second guest. Our second guest, it's from Canada. This time from Canada, and he's the president of the Marshall McLuhan Foundation. He's the president of the Marshall McLuhan Foundation. I had other notes, so just one second. All right, and he was a student of Marshall McLuhan back in the 70s, assisting him in some of his consultations with organizations seeking advice. He was also a Marshall McLuhan Centenary Fellow at the Faculty of Information, University of Toronto. Actually, our guest and I were fellows together. We gave our contribution to help breathe a new life into the McLuhan Center back in 2015. He's a social entrepreneur, he's a founder of the Vision TV in Canada, which was the world's first interfaith television internet service as well. And he started up many other TV and broadcasting services. And for the last 10 years has been teaching strategic communication and social entrepreneurship at Carleton University in Ottawa and at the University of Toronto Faculty of Information. And I was just reviewing, he's currently working, maybe facilitated by the current state of isolation, is currently working on a book entitled The Prairie Boys Guide to the Global Village, which is, I think, very relevant for today's discussion. So it's a great pleasure to host a great McLuhan's scholarship champion and a huge friend, David Nostbakken. Hello, David. How are you? Can you hear me?
Fine. I can hear you
Great,
fine.
great. Where are you right now, David? Where are you?
I'm at Stoneboat Farm, which is. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
I'm at Stoneboat Farm. It's a 200-acre farm that we bought about 20 years ago as a quasi cottage, as a place to escape, a place to get away from the speed of things. And so it's a very appropriate place to be right now. So we're actually doing now at this place what we had been doing for the previous 20 years.
And who you are quarantined with right now?
Just my wife at the moment, but we are actually in quarantine because we want to see a new grandchild, and you can't do that and we've been meeting with other people for business reasons and other things more than we should, and so we need to actually see no one for the next 14 days.
All right. So congrats. So for the new arrival in your life. So a perfect moment. He or she, it's a baby boy, baby girl?
It's a boy, yeah.
Boy. He will remember this moment. We will remember this moment, 2020. What a brave beginning to this world. So welcome. And so, David, all right. I will. I'm curious to know what you are doing with your with the Marshall McLuhan's Foundation. I'm curious to know more about your projects related to the McLuhan's scholarship and legacy. I'm very curious. So I'll be back to you shortly. So I will finish the first introduction and merry-go-round, and then we will have a chance to keep discussing. Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you. All right, here we are. So it's so nice. In the meantime, let me grab some comment. Hi to David Nostbakken from YouTube and Facebook, our Facebook group, right? Junichi, looking forward to seeing you here. All right. Let's move on. I think it's time to go back to Toronto with our next special guest. And what's going on here? Okay, with our next special guest, we are back to Toronto. And I'm glad to say that he is a media futurologist, right? So looking at making sense of media studies to, I won't say forecast, I will say to cast the future, so to really look at the future. So maybe then you can explain us what you mean by futurologist, and so also journalist with more than 20 years in print media. He has been working as an editor in the press for more than 20 years. He wrote a book, When Newspapers Die, and among many other publications, he authored a marvelous book on journalism, communication, transhumanism, which is called "The Human Has Media." Human Has Media. It's a great book to really understand the future of our humanity in a brave new technological world. And so it's a great pleasure from York University. He works at York University, so Toronto. It's a great pleasure to welcome and Monday night webinars Andrey Miroshnichenko, and my apologies for mispronouncing your
It's okay.
last name, Andrey.
It's okay. It's almost good. Hello, Paolo. Hello,
Hello,
everybody. So good to be here with you again. So I'm so glad that every Monday we can see each other at least on our screens. It's so important in this.
Great. Are you in Toronto right now? Yes?
Yes, I'm in
Somewhere.
Toronto with my family in quarantine as everybody.
Yeah. And by the way, what are you learning from the present and looking at the future, looking towards the future? So what's your feeling about our at least near future?
Yeah, this COVID-19 pandemic kind of ruined the old forecast and prognosis that we had before. So now we need to chart completely new ideas, theories, and so on. So in my area, for example, I foresee the decline of newspaper. Many people who are interested in the media. But what I foreseen had to happen approximately in the 20s, not now. But pandemic make it much closer to our days. So what should happen in 20s will happen just tomorrow. Newspapers in really bad shape, television, radio. So it's all going to extinct because of economic situation. And it's a weird situation because the demand for news is very high. So traffics or news websites are very high, but the business of news media is very bad. So now we need to understand this new situation to recast our forecasts.
Yeah, it's another look at another way to foresight the future. Absolutely. We will talk more about the future probably tonight. Because again, so we are already looking at the post-pandemic world. So I think this is important to really go beyond the current crisis and finding a meaningful sense for how to approach the near and even the long-term future. So thank you, Andrew. I will be back to you after finishing my first merry-go-round introducing our guests. And by the way, so thank you again for being with us tonight, and I will be with you again shortly. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. All right. So it's so nice to see that we are all gathering our thoughts in a brand new way. I think again, this state of isolation is a kind of intensifier. So we are more sensitive. I think we are all more sensitive. And I think it's now the time to take advantage of this sensitivity, right? We are maybe more introspective. We have been talking about meditation, concentration, and focus during this state of lockdown, isolation, quarantine, and so on. And again, it's important to take advantage of this moment to learn something from the current situation. In fact, the core question I do share with my guests and friends and with you all folks on Facebook and YouTube, the core question is what lessons are we are learning from the current situation? So what lessons, how can we really learn to make sense of this current crisis? And so I will it's now time to move on and it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our next guest. I will say that he is a legend in the field of media studies. His book, I will name shortly, is a Bible for media studies all across the world. I think even when my students read his book, they immediately get what is actually the sense of evolution and media ecological approach to media studies. And so it's a great pleasure to introduce our next guest. And so he is a professor of English at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. He previously served as director of C21 for 5 years. Also, he received actually his PhD in the University of California, Berkeley, and then has been teaching. He has been teaching at the Georgia Institute of Technology, the Wayne State, and he brings an outstanding record, of course, of institutional service and in the interdisciplinary scholarship, among many other books: Transcendentalist Hermeneutics, Institutional Authority, and the Higher Criticism of the Bible. In 1999, he published again a Green Bible for Media Studies, Remediation, Understanding New Media, co-authored with J. David Walter. And also he authored more recently Culture, Technology, and the Creation of America's National Parks, Pre-Mediation, Affect and Mediality After 9/11 in 2010. And so please join me welcome with a warm virtual round of applause in the Monday night webinars. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Grusin. Richard, here you are. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Paolo. Nice to be here.
Great, Richard. So again, it's a great pleasure. It's an honor for me. I've been studying on your book, particularly the Remediation, and it's very impressive to see how it's still today so relevant to really understand the very idea of media ecology. And by the way, we have a strong media ecology community of friends and people tonight. Mm-hmm. And by the way, so the Media Ecology Annual Convention is fast approaching, so maybe later I will say a few words. So thank you for joining us. So you are at home, I think. Ideally, you are at home in the McLuhan Scholarship and in the Media Ecology community, and you are at home physically, right? Where are you right now, Richard?
Right now, I'm in Chicago, where I moved in October. And that's my hometown. I was born.
It's your hometown.
My kind of town.
And what are you teaching this in this moment? Are you writing? How you are making sense of the current state of isolation?
Yeah, I'm not teaching. I'm paying attention to university politics as we decide what to do in the fall. And so that's taking a lot of time. And I've been writing a bit about the COVID situation, but nothing, just a blog post or two. So
still digesting your
feelings. I didn't, everybody write, it's like, it seemed like an obligation for people. I had to write a COVID piece, and I didn't want to just jump right in
on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
No, absolutely right. And but in a mid-term reaction, probably you will have to, because we've been discussing about changes in university education. So we were not prepared to this huge shift that is happening just right now. And I think it's time to really, maybe remediate education in an age of a pandemic, right?
Right. Well, Marshall McLuhan's, that was a big part of his project, was to talk about the way in which education was not equipped for electric technology. And I don't know that this move to online teaching, as the neoliberal university is doing it, I'm not convinced that's what Marshall McLuhan had in mind when he was thinking about the sort of all-at-onceness. But it's an interesting question, I think, to discuss.
Great, great. And by the way, so just to prove you how our community of the folks is so engaged, I just got a comment from someone on Facebook who didn't actually grant permission StreamYard. So anyway, so we don't know who, I don't see. My Kind of Town is a song of Frank Sinatra. So sorry, I didn't catch that. So I need to re-listen all Frank Sinatra's songs. Sorry,
Absolutely.
I didn't catch that. But I like the idea about My Kind of Town, Chicago. Great, sorry. You see how our community is so kind and participatory. Yes. So Richard, it's great. So I'll be back to you in a little while. Okay, shortly, for a second merry-go-round. So I know, of course, I asked already a Marshall McLuhan's quote, a secret special object for. So we will talk about all these things in a little while. So I'll see you later. Thank you, Richard.
Right. Yeah,
Thank you. All right, Frank Sinatra, My Kind of Town. My Kind of Town. I learned something new tonight. Okay, so. And by the way, so Alex promptly, I think, I'm sure this is a video to the Frank Sinatra song. All right. I think Beatriz is there. Hello, Beatriz.
Hi.
Great. So, Beatriz, let me just share a few thoughts. Firstly, we were talking about the lessons we are learning in this state of isolation. So you have been spending a semester at McGill just before the pandemic, then back to Brazil. So I was curious to know more about what's going on there in Brazil. What's your feeling about how beyond the current crisis? I know it's very kind of emotional take, but beyond that, what's your feeling in terms of making sense of this disruption into the field of education, financial, cultural situation? What's your feeling?
That's a very good question. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say I'm very optimistic. I couldn't be. It's impossible to be optimistic right now here in Brazil. So my feelings are not the best ones, unfortunately. And I think everybody knows what's going on, but our president, he doesn't believe in COVID. So he goes to the streets and he calls people to protest against our democratic institutions. He says he's the Constitution himself. Just, it's absurd. The situation here is of I have to say that because I think it's important, but it's of censorship, of people being killed. We had just the last week, we had a child that was 5 years old, and he was working. He was with his mother. His mother was working for a woman in Recife, in Brazil, in Northeast. And she asked the maids. She was a maid, this woman, and she brought her son together to work because she didn't have anybody to let her son with. So the person who was like the person who hired this maid, she asked the maid to go on the street and go out with the dog because she couldn't do that, and the child was left by himself, and it turns out he was killed. This person pressed the button of the elevator to the 9th floor, and the child went off the elevator completely lost while his mother was walking the dog, and he died. And so that's a level of absurdity that we have in slavery. We still have a slavery heritage in Brazil, and it's very important to say that these people were Black. So the child was Black, his mother was Black. So this is like, it's impossible to be optimistic right now. So we had lots of riots. We had not riots, but we had beautiful powerful manifestations over the weekend here in Rio, in many different cities in Brazil. But I think it's important to share this because some people don't know the level of cruelty that we have here. And of course, the government is part of that. So I'm not optimistic at all whatsoever. And in terms of, for example, education, we have been having our fundings cut. So we don't have fundings anymore for many things. It's a very difficult situation. We have professors that are being persecuted because they teach something that is called for them like ideology of gender. So we're not supposed to teach some things. And the situation, and of course, COVID. So we have COVID. We have more than 30,000 people that are dead right now, and just because of COVID. And the numbers, these are the official ones, the true numbers.
Exactly. So we don't know the actual numbers and facts.
It's like 10 times more, yeah. So it's hard to summarize everything, but it's just to say that it's impossible to be in a very light or relaxed or optimistic mood right now here in Brazil. It's absolutely impossible. But I think we will learn something from all of this, and we're going to be able to get past that. I think we're going to find the strength to do that, and we're going to be able to get together in order to do that. But I don't know when or how. It's I couldn't be a futurologist right now because I wouldn't be able to say anything about what's going on in the future, in our near future, because every day we have some new news,
Sure.
and they're always bad.
Kind of uncertainty, an ongoing uncertainty, right? So this is immobilism. So everything is frozen still.
That's absolutely that's it. That we have no certainties. Just the certainty that each day is worse than the previous one. That's the level of pessimistic thoughts that I have been having, because it's impossible to be different nowadays. It's very hard.
Yeah. And rather than pessimistic, I would say realistic, right? So this is a real realistic picture of what's going on in Brazil. It looks absolutely no sense in the 21st century, right? Sometimes, kind of in Canada, we take it for granted that democracy or other kind of civil rights are finally available. Instead, there is still a lot to do to face any form of discrimination, any form of inequalities, any form of racism, and never take it for granted. So there is still a lot to do. And realistically, we are here to reflect on how the media environment can be less polluted. Less polluted means a more sane and clean and livable digital environment, right? To foster equality, to foster participation, to foster democratic participation, right? So in a country like Brazil, for instance. So thank you for bringing this up, Beatriz.
Thank you for letting me speak to this amazing crowd, because it's important for us to be able to talk to people about what's going on, because I don't know if people really know what's going on. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah. And another question, just about your interest in music and social media. What's going on in Brazil? We have been discussing here at the Monday Night Webinars about digital theater, digital performance, how art in general, arts and performing arts are reacting to this shock, particularly for live events, in a very creative way. We are learning and we are seeing a lot of improvements. So what's going on in your field of music, social media in Brazil particularly?
It's very interesting, because I was attending a live the other day with my friends, my colleagues that study also music here in Brazil. And one of them, Luciana Xavier, who is a researcher in São Paulo, she showed us some numbers that we are Brazilian artists are the number 10 we are among the number 10 the first 10 videos that are more watched in terms of live music nowadays. So there are like 10 videos or 10 live performances that happened, and among them we have like 8 or 7 from Brazil in the whole world. This only on YouTube. So what we see is like in some ways, I think we have a protagonism in that music in Brazil is such an important part of our culture. And in different genres, it's not just one another. It's not only samba. We have so many different genres here. So I think we're kind of, in a way, we're being the protagonists in this new format of live performances on YouTube, at least. We have many of these lives that gather like thousands of people at the same time. So I think that's important to take notes, to observe what is going on. And we also have an artist that I'm very fond of. She's called Teresa Cristina. Mm-hmm. And she is creating kind of an environment through her Instagram. She doesn't use YouTube very much. She uses Instagram. But she created an environment of sociability. So people go there not only to watch her talk about what's going on and sing, of course, but they also get together as if they were at a party. So people are like flirting and asking each other out, not out, but to chat somewhere else. And with all this, she has amazing guests as well. The most prominent names in Brazilian music, they have already been part of these lives. So she really gathered, she created a community all by herself just because she was feeling very lonely and she wanted to share her problems with dealing with all this situation. And now these people are called the Christiners because they are followers of Christina.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's very impressive. That's very impressive.
So we have this creativity going on, but we still don't know how it's going to be financially viable. That's one thing that we still don't know how it's going to happen. But there are some people who are already trying to find a way. For example, creating closed spaces where the performer presents himself or herself, and then only people who got the ticket could get in. So this is like a live concert. But most of them are being free, so it's really for free. And we don't know how artists are going to be, how they're going to be able to manage that financially. But this is something we still have to see how it's going to be.
No, thank you for sharing this. It's I think it's important that we are confident that through arts and creativity, right, we can rediscover what makes us human, what makes us better persons, and art in McLuhan-esque terms as an anti-environment, right, can really foster cultural participation and foster another way of looking at what's going on around that. So thank you for sharing. And I was just reviewing the comments. There are many comments in support of you, Beatriz, from many folks from Facebook and YouTube. One for all, which I think is from Brazil, Mariana.
She was my student.
And yes, many other comments to really express their solidarity and support for the situation in Brazil and gay. So we are together, and we're glad you are safe, right? And you can keep working and bringing your ideas, right, to really express your civic engagement through education. So being an educator is one of the most important jobs ever. And so you have a great mission, Beatriz. You have a great mission.
Thank you. Right. Thank you so much for the support. And I think nowadays we have to really rethink our importance in this way of teaching and communicating with students. And then we can talk about that later. I think other people are going to talk about that too.
Yeah. All right. So thank you again, Beatriz. Let me see what's going on with my guest. my guests and your fellow guests. So I was curious to see. Okay, I'll see you later, Beatriz. I was curious to see what's going on there in the inland between Toronto and Ottawa. I never remember the name of the place, David. I'm sorry. So, David, what's I wanted to share. So David, you have to know, folks, that David was, I told you already, a student of Marshall McLuhan, a collaborator, consultant, and he used to attend the Monday night seminars at the Coach House in Toronto. And David told me that Marshall McLuhan used to start up the Monday night seminars by making a question. What's on your mind, right? So, is that right, David? What's on your mind?
Well, if you hadn't seen Marshall for some time, he would ask two questions of you often. The first, what have you learned? Since we last met, what's on your mind, and what have you learned? And the second is, have you heard any new jokes?
Because, that's good, of course.
Which is one of the most, I think, endearing aspects of McLuhan was his sense of humor. He found humor in almost everything. He loved puns, and he loved. If you said a joke that he could appreciate, he would write it down and file it. So he actually had a file of the best jokes that he could call upon when needed, as though he was being spontaneous.
I see, and that's why actually I get prepared. So I have a question for you as well, David. Here, this is Marshall, and this is what's on your mind, David. What's on your mind? You can even turn on your face. So what's on your mind, David?
Let me just say, Beatriz is a marvelous or touching description of how difficult things are in her region of the world. It occurred to me that there is not much faith in the systems of government or systems of business and industry for many, many people. The 1% reality in many regions of the world, and some of the repression that relates to government systems. So there's I think a decrease in faith in institutions, particularly those in power. That's a different thing from hope. And what you see happening around the George Floyd situation here in Canada, and especially in the United States, but around the world, this is a very hopeful sign. We may see a diminution of the significance of some of our institutions. To what extent that is the case, we don't know yet. But very often, real important change starts from the ground up, through civil activity, through civil disobedience, and through the huge outcry of voices that otherwise have been silent. And so, notwithstanding the difficulty in Brazil, one would never want to reduce the significance of that. You can look to the United States to some extent in the same way. To what extent are we do we have faith in the system at the moment? But there's a hopefulness in the new generation, the upcoming generation. And historically, most important or long-lasting social change is a generational thing. It takes 1, 2, or 3 generations for the change to actually occur. But thinking of young children now, 4, 5, so your children, Paolo, that are witnessing what's going on in terms of the social movement around George Floyd.
Yeah,
I think this has a significant influence on their worldview and their perception, and so it's a hopeful sign that the public response to a situation like that has emerged in this time of pandemic. And maybe they're related in the sense that we have slowed ours down and we have paid more attention to things that are more important to us. And we're saying we're mad as hell. We're not going to take it anymore. And we're out on the street saying just that. And I think it's a very hopeful sign. Whether it will sustain, this is always the worry. But in the moment, I have some optimism. Beatriz, I have some optimism, even in your situation.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing your optimism. Definitely, this is the time. This is the time for not being silent, not avoid this important issues, and probably. Yeah, probably one day we will remember 2020 for the ability of rediscussing, rethinking, and questioning the way we undertake some social issues. And so, yes, I like your optimism and your take on, again, learning and fostering the awareness of what's going on around us in this particular moment. So thank you, David. And we have a few friends. Sal, fully agree. Yes, very well said. And by the way, so even if you don't agree, my friends, you can. We are open to discussion and conversation. So if you don't agree, share your thoughts. Okay, so this is going to be a very frank, open, and clean conversation. So it's very important that you share your thoughts. So let's thank you, David. I wanted to bring back Richard from Chicago. So Richard, what's your I was curious to learn about your secret object, I mean your symbolical object for facing this moment of isolation. So folks, I've been asking my guests every week to identify one symbolic object. Here you are, a symbolic object to symbolize, to emphasize this particular moment. And so you have your mask over there, Richard. Why? What? When? Tell us something about.
Well, maybe I'll take this off to speak. I've been thinking about this COVID pandemic from the perspective of media theory or of mediation theory, which I've sort of focused more on, I suppose. And so two things. I mean, I first began thinking about COVID itself as a form of mediation that needs to be understood, a form of kind of total or radical mediation that needs to be understood not just as a biological virus, but as something that is social, economic, technical, and as we've seen lately, very political. And so that was sort of one way I've been thinking about things, and I'm still working on developing that argument. But I do take Marshall McLuhan's, emphasis on how media impact us or massage us and the environments that they create. And so that's sort of how I've been thinking about this, coupled with a kind of Bruno Latour focus on the agency of objects, which is also not foreign to Marshall McLuhan. So the one piece I have been circulating is a blog piece on masks, because you've been talking a lot, Paolo, about how we are both isolated, yet through this technology have been brought together. And I think that masks provide a really interesting example of that, because I've been thinking about the kind of collectivity that gets created in a crowd of people with masks, which are meant, on the one hand, to isolate us, because the point of the mask is to be a barrier, a form of mediation between sort of translucent or opaque mediation between you and the world. But they also bring us together, because when you see other people, now I'm talking about before the George Floyd riots, when you see other people with masks, there's a kind of understanding that, okay, we're both doing this for the benefit of others, that we're wearing masks so other people don't get infected, because that's really what the masks do. So that just got me thinking about masks and the agency of these masks that now have appeared all over the place, and whether they could foster a kind of collectivity that would be, well, let's, for the extreme version, revolutionary. Whether we could, what we can see right now that things can change really quickly if we need to. I mean, there's been people talk about, oh, you can't make these changes, but we stop businesses, we close public space, and so forth. And I think one of the questions is whether after the pandemic, it's not about returning to what normal was before, but maybe we should think about the possibility of a new future. And this is how the pandemic connects with, as Andrew was saying, or asking about the question of the relation between the pandemic and what's happened in light of George Floyd. I think the connection between them has to do with, it has to do with several things, including a recognition of the unequal impact of these disease on people who are poor, people of color, and so forth. So the George Floyd shooting, the reason that this shooting, or not shooting, the George Floyd murder, the knee on the neck, the reason that this murder has done what other murders didn't do, although Ferguson created quite a bit of protest as well, is because we are in this pandemic state, and we have seen in a heightened way the injustice that's been brought about and the possibility of making radical change, of actually turning our society into something different. And Minnesota now, city of Minneapolis, is proposing to disband the police, which is just amazing. That. So the masks now, if you look at a crowd of protesters, there's been a lot of protesting in Chicago, for example, and I've been on the outskirts of it for just safety reasons, but people are wearing masks, but the masks aren't really helping. These cloth masks don't really prevent people from catching the disease. They help some in terms of transmitting it, but I think they really stand as a kind of object of solidarity. And so when you see a whole crowd and everybody is masked up, the force of that is to create a sense of collectivity through these material objects and the sort of shared wearing of them. So that's what I've been thinking about lately.
I agree. Wearing a mask is even more useful to express the idea of, okay, I'm doing my part, right? So we are all in this together. I'm doing my part. I'm doing the best to help in solidarity as a society to face the spread of the virus. Mm-hmm. I like the idea that we are learning how to adapt, how to change quickly, right? Mm-hmm. How to change quickly. Is there something that if we learn to change quickly, if we learn to always change, always adapt to the changes out there, is this something we miss, we lose in changing so rapidly, so quickly?
Well, I mean, of course, there's always things lost. Slowness gets lost, although one of the things about the pandemic is it did provide space for more slowness. But I think most of what's been getting lost in this change have been things that deserve to be lost. Monuments to racist and white supremacists are coming down, and institutional change is happening. I mean, of course, there's always loss. But I think it's necessary, in fact, to lose or sacrifice one historical formation or social formation in order to build a new one on top of it. And nothing is destroyed completely. Print stays on when electronic media, arrives. When you add digital, when electronic goes digital, print and electronic in a more traditional sense stay on. So it's not that things are lost completely, but there is, we would say, remediated in ways, in a variety of different kinds of ways, actually. So, yeah, there's a lot to be lost, but more to be gained, I think. So.
No, I agree. Thank you. And by the way, John was asking and wondering what we were wondering actually about. Is there a reason Richard is using Africa as the symbol? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I actually picked this out and had this mask before the George Floyd event, the George Floyd murder. I like the design. I like that it was also a map of Africa because there's a kind of solidarity there as well. I've walked past. I remember coming out of the Whole Foods early on, when wearing this mask, and there was a black employee there, an older man, and he looked at me and smiled and said, "Nice mask." And so I think it's important to kind of have those experiences.
Right, absolutely, I agree. The mask is becoming a new way of express who you are, what we think. It's a kind of symbolical face, right?
Right, but they also, Paolo, what's so interesting is they both express something, but they also hide something. When you ask what's lost, they conceal something. And of course, there's a long history in the US in film and television of mass figures, especially in the West, but also more recently in terms of violent revolution from V for Vendetta or, Joker or Watchmen, that amazing series where masks come to play a really important role. So this is what I've been working on now, is trying to write something that brings together the way masks are functioning now and looks at them visually in relation to the way masks have functioned in media in the past, television, cinema, and so forth.
Yeah, there was a kind of activism to face AI face recognition using masks and other jewelry and objects to get. And in fact, for instance, an anonymous Facebook user, again, so please grant the permission to get your says masks unite us and as AI less data points to distinguish the individual. So to some extent, it challenges, right, the very idea of facial recognition and how we can be ourselves in an age of AI and face recognition.
And in the current Black Lives Matter moment, that's really important as well, because one of the things that I think is pretty well known is that AI does not work well on black faces. In other words, there's a lot of there are a lot of mistaken arrests, for example, or apprehensions of people because the AI identifies one person as another when in fact these are two different people. And I think there's a kind of racial bias people have shown built into the algorithms of facial recognition. So wearing masks also helps to thwart that in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, not to speak of any other kind of algorithm bias that are there. Yeah, I think Andrey will like to join this discussion. Andrey, you have been studying, I think, all those topics. So, what's your take on masks and the idea that we are facing a maelstrom, a vortex, a media vortex to some extent? How we can get away with this vortex, Andrey?
Well, first, not on masks, that as any medium, masks can be weaponized as well. So they became a tool, a means in political struggle as well. So they were used to subjugate those who cannot be subjugated other ways. Speaking of Maelstrom, so my favorite quote, or one of the favorite quotes from Marshall McLuhan is, "I don't explain, I explore," which is the quote that I most disagree with, probably because of my journalist background. So I usually explain, not explore. When I think about that, I think that this was kind of ethical manifesto by McLuhan, why he rejected explaining and preferred exploring. I think that was the stance towards the media environment. What can we do with the media environment, with all the changes that are going out there, can we actually resist, or can we fight environment? Technically, we can. Like Don Quixote, he fought windmills, and it was a noble enterprise, but without any good results. So basically, this is the opposition, the resistance versus acceptance. Do we explore? Do we understand? Do we accept, or do we fight? Do we resist? Of course, the common idea is we need to resist. We need to do some activist actions toward changing something in the environment. But speaking about Maelstrom metaphor, what was done by this sailor? He recognized the pattern of the whirlpool, so he left the boat, which went down, and he attached himself to the debris that that went up. This was the way for him to save himself. So this is probably, I connect this idea of a Maelstrom metaphor and the quote, I don't explain, I explore. I see that is probably the recipe of McLuhan, how to deal with environment. We need to recognize the patterns that are not harmful, that are potentially prospective, that lead to better future, maybe. And we need to choose these patterns in the maelstrom, in this swirling water, swirling torrent. And so otherwise we will resist, we will fight the water that anyway goes down. So this I think this is my understanding of this maelstrom metaphor. So acceptance and developing an immunity, an immune response, understanding of patterns instead of just blind resistance. Maybe I will, I don't know.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing this. And as usual, our friends and folks on Facebook and YouTube share their reactions and puns. So we like making puns and playing with words. And so I wanted to share with you, Andrew McLuhan. I don't explain, I explode, which is, again, a pun. So thank you, Andrew, for sharing. And feel free, folks, to share your puns, to share your interpretations and playing with words, playing with language. We know language is a medium to foster thinking rather than just to express thinking. So we need to employ, right, language as a means for facilitating a new kind of thinking. So thank you, Andrew, for sharing. And by the way, so let's bring in David Beck and Beatriz. I was curious to, okay, let's put it this way. I was curious to know if you, Beatriz, you shared, firstly, do you have your object, Beatriz? Yeah.
I
David,
do.
you have yours? Your secret symbolical object? All right. Okay, I'll let you. Okay, so Beatriz, you go first. You go first. Tell us something about your object.
Okay, so this is something that my students gave me a couple of years ago, and this is kind of a it's a picture, but it emulates the classroom blackboard.
Yeah, sure,
so
sure.
yeah, so this is the idea. This is kind of a blackboard, and it says something that I usually say to people in class or in supervising students. Oh, I spoke too much. And this is something that I usually say, and this is my name here. So I think this object is important for me these days for two reasons, and one of them is that it brings the classroom to my home, and I miss classroom very much. So I feel that students are here with me. So the medium is the message, literally, in this case. And I think the other thing is in terms of content, so what it says. So I spoke too much. That is something that I usually say. Maybe it's time to listen more. And of course, we have to speak. We have to say things. But maybe it's time for me to listen more than speak too much. I just have to find a better balance, I think. And so this is the object that I chose for these reasons.
Oh, thank you, Beatriz. Yeah, it's time to listen more. Absolutely, I agree. David, what's your symbolical object? All right. You miss the airplane, the aircraft.
The paper airplane. It relates to the quote that I chose. If I might read that, Paolo.
I have it.
The quote.
Your quote is this one, right? There are no passengers on the spaceship Earth. We are all crew.
That's true, but it was the other one I was trying to speak to. Have you got that one?
Hold on, I'll find it. You go ahead. I'll find it. Just give me 1 second. Go ahead.
He said in a book that he wrote with Bruce Powers, the greatest discovery of the 21st century will be the discovery that man was not meant to live at the speed of light. Now, the reason I chose airplane, when I was a student and a teaching assistant to McLuhan, he used to bring me along sometimes with a couple of others on his consultations when IBM wanted to know how to get businesses to use the desktop computer, when American Library Association was concerned about the future of books, and some designers, interior designers, which is to the point of this airplane, were designing the interior of Terminal 2 Airport in Toronto when it was taken over by Air Canada. They came to the McLuhan Center and asked if he could give some advice on who people are when they're in the airport. What's the culture of the airport? Who are people in the airport that might influence the design that they were competing to apply to a renovated airport? So our approach was very simple. We went to the airport and watched people, and we observed that the airport was a curious 20th century invention. It was a place that people rush to get to like crazy. Break speed limits, go through red lights, froth at the mouth to get to this place, but not actually to be there, but to go somewhere else. So if I was in an airport and I met you, Paolo, and I said, "Who are you?" You could say, "I'm Barry, and I'm a heart surgeon." And I'll say, I'm Keith, and I'm an architect. And you wouldn't know whether I was telling the truth, and I wouldn't know. But more important, in an airport, as opposed to the rest of life, you wouldn't care whether the person is telling the truth or not, because you're going to get on one airplane, that person's going to get on another airplane. So the answer to the question, "Who are you in the airport?" we came up with was, you can be anybody you want to be with impunity, because you're not there. You're there to be somewhere else. And so we saw, as Marshall would say, people putting on the dog, being somebody other than who they are. Maybe what people do on Facebook now. So that's in contrast to the village, which is the point I want to make. In the metaphoric village, if someone asks you who you are, you're going to tell them, truthfully probably, because you're in a village, you're going to find out anyway.
Yeah.
But more important, you care. There's a kind of ethical, moral compulsion to be honest, to be part of the social fabric. So we came up with this theorem, we talked about a theorem, of the inverse proportion between speed of communication and transportation and the need to call upon ethical, moral principle. Not that you don't have it, but it's not necessary to call upon it. So if you're watching a television ad for toothpaste and they say it not only cleans but protects, and you ask the question, is that true? Now, it's normally a reasonable question, but in that case, it doesn't quite fit the social transaction between you and the advertiser, who knows that you know, that they know that they're spinning you. Now, so every group that we spoke to after that experience in the airport, we would ask among ourselves, are they in a village or are they in an airport? Are they there to be there, or are they just there to be somewhere else? Are they really committed to the service of their organization to people, or are they just trying to grow the company and flip it? Are they just trying to climb the hierarchy in their business to get a better job? Are they at the cocktail party looking over your shoulder when you're talking to them to see if there's a better offer somewhere else? Or are they there? So there's a difference between in an airport. There's this notion, this is a huge influence on the things that I did in later life. Are you in an airport? Are you in a village? Do you care about what you're doing or not? Now, I ask the question then, in a global village, especially a global village now dominated by social media and the electronic technology, is that an airport or a village? And my sense has always been it's more airport. On Facebook, you're spinning all kinds of silliness about who you are and where you are and how great you are and how wonderful everything is, right? This causes lots of stress among young people who always see the grass greener on the other side of the fence. But in the age of the pandemic, when the way in which the virus went viral on social media, it was a question of which was most viral, the disease or the coverage, the exponentiation of it on social media. And the result of the pandemic has been everything has had to slow down. Now, I don't think the extent to which that was the case would have happened without the social media and the electronic technologies that have caused this to happen on such a scale, with such profundity, right? So in fact, what the pandemic has done is to take us from, we've been on speed, as Douglas Rushkoff would say in his books, Throwing Stones at Google Bus, or Team Earth, or Team Human, is the domination of our lives by the need of quarterly reports of progress, of always moving forward as fast as possible. We've been on speed, and suddenly we've slowed down, and we are smelling, out here in the country, and I am between Ottawa and Toronto. We just moved here from the city, and we wanted to get some flowers to plant around our farmhouse, and all the flowers were sold out in 2 weeks in May.
Wow.
So people are literally wanting to smell the flowers, right? So we have. I think that the symbol of the airplane is to say, we've been on speed, we've been in the airport, and our social structures have been airport-like, and something about what's happened, as much the social media impact as the disease, has caused us to go back into the village.
No, thank you for sharing. In fact, Julia Hildebrand shares the idea of Marc Auger, the idea of a non-lieu, the non-lieu, where we cross by, we don't know who we are, we don't know. And actually, social media, the risk maybe is that social media may become a kind of non-place, a kind of non-lieu, where we don't know who we are, we don't really know what matters to us. That's very clever. So thank you, David. And I wanted to bring up the quote from Beatriz. Beatriz, you shared a quote from the Marshall McLuhan's quote. Let me see if I find it, which is here. We drive into the future using only our rear view mirror, right? But I have a special, I have an experiment, a kind of visual experiment. Let me, if you don't mind, let me see if I can make it. So you can comment your quote here. We drive into the future using only our rear view mirror. Share your thoughts, and I will put you into the rear view mirror right now. All right, here we are. So go ahead.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Surprise. So, she didn't know.
I loved it. I didn't know. Yeah. So now I'm seeing the future with my rear view mirror. And when I just wanted to say something about the prior discussion about social media, but I can say something about that later. But in terms of the quote, I chose this one. I was so there were so many quotes that were so updated that I feel that they're so connected to our reality nowadays. But I chose this one because I have this strong feeling that we are still trying to use our epistemologies, our tools, our strategies from the past, try to look to our future after the pandemic. So I think one thing is many people are talking about, oh, let's go back to normal. And what is this normal? Many people are questioning this. So do you want to go back to a world where we have such environmental issues, such inequality, and everything that we know, that it's so unbalanced and so not normal? So that's one thing that was stuck to my mind. So I believe that we have to face this more than ever. What is this kind of future that we are going to create for ourselves after the pandemic, during the pandemic, right now? And I think we cannot still continue to use the same strategies and modes of thinking that we had in the past. So this is why I chose this one. So I think we have to face a structural and also epistemological change. That's what I was thinking. When we talked about algorithms, for example, when Richard Grusin was talking about algorithm, we do have racism in algorithms, in the way that they function. I have dear friends of mine who study that here in Brazil. So this is one thing. The people who makes these algorithms, they are still using structures and epistemologies and ways of being in the world that we shouldn't have anymore. So this is why I thought about this quote. And if I could just add something very, very shortly about the performances in social media, because my book was about that. So this is my book. So I actually just have a small disagreement in terms of Marc Augé's idea of known place. And I actually argue the opposite in my book. I say that we cannot have these homogeneous views about what social media are and what people do there. So one thing that I argue is it's exactly the opposite of a known place. It is a place where people create bonding, where people create not only good things, of course, but also where they create businesses, where they discuss a lot. And we have seen that with elections and everything. So I think that more than it's not exactly a known place. It is actually different places, different small communities inside this big platform, which is completely non-transparent. It's completely it's so opaque, it's so obscure, the way that it functions, the way that it works. And so it goes to Facebook, Instagram, all these platforms that we don't know exactly how they work, but we are all there, or most of us are there. But I just don't believe that it's a known place. I think it's quite the opposite. There are many places within the same big problematic platform, and we perform our identities in different ways depending on where we are inside these platforms and with whom we're talking to. I think so too. So this is, for me, it's a matter of performance, and the algorithm and the structure and the ways that we go into these spaces. They also, of course, they're changing our own subjectivities. So the way that we see ourselves as humans now, not completely, but it's changing because of the connections that we have through these platforms. So we have different ways of bonding, and also of fighting, and also of spreading fake news, and all these in these platforms. So I think it's a hell of a place, good, bad one,
agree,
a complex one.
Very clever. And actually, I wanted to step into the rear view mirror as well. So, and just to remind that rightly, and Andrew was reminding that the original quote actually is a little bit more. We look at the present through the rear view mirror. We march backwards into the future. So, which is even more relevant to what you just said. So, thank you. Okay, I'm getting a little. Let me put it back. Where's the? All right. So, thank you for playing with the rear view mirror. And let me bring back Richard. I wanted to What's going on? It's all dark. Okay, Richard.
I
Okay.
have natural light here. How about this?
All right, much better. Much better, because I wanted to play with you as well, and that's let me see. Let me put this back. I wanted to play with you as well, Richard, and sharing an idea. So what's your quote? I was going to here. This is your Marshall McLuhan's quote, right here. The shock, is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
The shock of recognition in an electric information environment, minority groups can no longer be contained, ignored. Too many people know too much about each other. Part 2. Our new environment compels commitment and participation. We have become irrevocably involved with and responsible for each other. That's very relevant for today's. Can you tell us more about?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this question of protest and masking and so forth in thinking about, in finding this quote. It's a quote that I'm not sure I paid a lot of attention to in previous readings of The Medium is the Massage, but in going back through it in preparation, it really jumped out as a quote that spoke to our moment, because it's precisely the fact that we can see on media these brutal murders, that we can see on media what's happening in terms of pandemic situations, that we can see other people who might have been invisible to us, as the quote suggests, they're no longer. And then everybody, multi-generational, multiracial, multi-ethnic, I think multi-class even groups are coming out and participating in these protests. One of the most amazing things about these protests in the US as part of the Black Lives Matter movement is how many white people are involved, and how many young people especially are involved, because now we see, as McLuhan says, we see the lives of other people. We see the lives of people who in a print world would have been just invisible to us. But now, with the immediacy of electric media, digital media, and so forth, we are people are in our homes. They're in our living rooms, and we can't ignore their situations anymore. And I think that's a really big part of what's happening right now. And because in this quarantine, this moment of, now loosening quarantines, the way that we've been social with people is in this environment we're in now, in these online media environments, on screen. And this is what sociality looks like now. One person, two people, a rear view mirror, 9 people in a square like Hollywood Squares or something, the Brady Bunch. But we relate to people almost exclusively now through these socially networked media. And I think because of that, we are brought face to face with the situation of people who are very different from us and who are in other places, because they no longer feel different. They feel like they're part of our same sociality. I use this screen to teach. I use these interfaces to have meetings at my university. And in the same interface, I use this interface with my therapist. In the same interface, we also see these crimes, this oppression, this injustice. And I think that's why people are now engaged and participatory, many more people, in a way that really hadn't happened in this for quite some time.
Well, I think this is a nice take to involve our other guests in a conversation about this very point. Let me see if I can. All right, bring you all here. So it's 9:30. I like to first of all to open up to comments from Facebook and YouTube. So feel free to share your questions from the audience and folks. Feel free to post your questions for our special guests. And share your thoughts as well. So, Beatriz, okay, here you are. What's your comment on Richard's thoughts? Andrey, David, Beatriz.
If you guys want to start,
Sure. No, you start. You start, Beatriz.
Okay, because I talked too much.
Like your student says, you say you like talking.
I do. I cannot deny. I think Richard has a very good point. I think we're using these platforms for different objectives and trying to connect with different people. But I think we have to remember sometimes that we have to remind ourselves that sometimes, for example, here in Brazil, kind of 50% of the population does not have access to the internet. And when they do, they use their cell phones. They're not in this nice laptop, etc. So I think we tend to forget these things. And it's, for us, it's so natural. We're there all the time. We're doing so many things. But so many people are not. And I cannot stop thinking about that. How are these people dealing with that? And how many people are being obliged to work? Like the delivery people, the delivery guys, they are there delivering things to us because we cannot leave home, but they can risk their lives and we cannot risk ours. So I think there's a whole complication about this connectivity that we think it's so ubiquitous and it's so it's spreadable, but at the same time it has a lot of people. We have lots of people that are not here. They cannot do none of these things. And I try to keep remember that. I try to keep reminding myself of that, so that I don't forget that it's so natural.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Even particularly this current pandemic situation is enhancing digital inequalities, right? So we take for granted that even kids have devices for homeschooling and everything, or internet connection, unlimited data, all these basic needs in an information society that we take it for granted, instead are paradoxically exacerbating the digital inequality. So this is absolutely great. Any other? Thank you, Beatriz. A comment for David, Andrew, Richard?
Well, actually, these Monday night webinars are a bit of an eye opener. Maybe it's common to everyone else, but Paolo, what you've done with this has demonstrated creative use of technologies for a real discussion. Remember when we were doing seminars in the McLuhan Center, we would have 70 or so people in circles talking, 3 or 4 guests as we're doing here. It would be confined to that small room. And we could have real genuine conversations. We found we were able to have real conversations. Now you're having the same conversation with people from Brazil and from Japan and from Africa. I mean, and as though this is normal. And it became suddenly normal. Let me put it that way. So in some of the things that I'm doing, including with the McLuhan Foundation, you could clearly what before seemed you can't get there from here, it's too difficult. What you're doing here with this thing has given, combining Facebook with YouTube, and God knows what else you're doing, is making it possible for people to have real conversations around the world. Now, this is just June of 2020. I'm expecting that by June 2021, all kinds of new technologies will emerge that will enable us even more. So I can't think that talk about not going back to the same old thing. All of us will be excited to have real conversations on real issues worldwide more regularly with people who we know and trust and can have where there's no sort of prima donna, expectations, but real conversations among people who care about each other and are similar. This is really, really significant. And I think we're just seeing the beginning of a revolution in that sense.
Yeah, I agree, and it's time to even rethink kind of international scholarly gatherings, such as conferences, symposia, all these things, and again fostering a more global dimension of our dialogue and exchange, right? Beyond the boundaries, beyond our geographical boundaries, and we can rediscover how international gatherings are possible thanks to virtual online technologies, and rethink the way we undertake the value of conversation, dialogue, and academic exchange in general. So great. And I hear just a little noise. I wanted to make sure what's going on. All right. Okay, I got it. It's Richard. There is a kind of noise somewhere. And in the meantime, I take advantage for this little short break for making an announcement. We were talking about scholarly associations and international gatherings, international conferences. Yes, on it's fast approaching, June 17th to June 20th, online on Zoom. Actually, it will take place the 21st annual convention of the Media Ecology Association, Communication Choices and Challenges, with two very important featured speakers: Jay Rosen, media critic, and Marianne Wolf, media scholar, literacy scholar, digital literacy scholar, and many other things. So save the date, June 17th. So basically next week. Keep an eye or join us if you wish. Beatriz will be there. I think Andrey will be there, and so you are all welcome to join us and to keep to the conversation going, to explore how media ecology can help us understand the PandeMedia, as I like to call it. Here we are. There are a few comments from the. Okay, Julia promptly is sharing the mediaecology.org/convention. I think the draft program is on, so you can check it out and see what's going on. Essentially, we are going to host. My little thing there. All right, we're going to host my symbolical object just dropped down. Oh my dear. I'll show you. The draft October show. Check it out. The draft program. We are going to run the virtual conference on Zoom. There will be rooms, discussion rooms, parallel sessions, and we are trying to foster the idea of interactive conversation, not just presentation, not just paper presentations, but also taking advantage of exploring a new platform to reimagine the way we undertake conferences and conventions in general. So it's a nice time to experiment. All right, and then Richard, you're okay. I brought you back. And talking about webinar, I just saw Andrew. Stay tuned for a webinar announcement next month regarding city as classroom. We look forward to it. Andrew, let us know. Let us know what's going on. What are you cooking? And again, the city as a classroom, and I will say the web. Online streaming as a classroom nowadays, so we will keep discussing about this. So it's 9:44. I think it's time for a final merry-go-round. to, well, going towards the conclusion of tonight's Monday night webinar, or in Japanese, no problem webinar, no problem webinar, Monday night, right, Junichi? Junichi will be with us, I think, in a couple of weeks. So, no problem webinar, Monday night webinar, final merry-go-round. Who wants to start the final merry-go-round? Andrew, you were silent, so I'll give you the word.
David reminded that Marshall McLuhan used to ask, "What joke have you heard recently?" So I just recollected the joke. So this is gonna be the first year when I will not attend a tropical resort because of COVID-19. All the recent years I didn't go there because I didn't have money. So first time because of COVID-19. And also I would like to talk a little bit about this gathering offline and online. As you can see, this is my symbolical object, which is Marshall McLuhan cap. So
sorry,
many people,
I forgot to ask you about the symbolical
many people complain that they got a full head of hair because of quarantine, because they're restricted in access to hairdress salon. For some reason, this hasn't happened to me. I haven't got this head of hair, and I use this cap to hide my nonconformity. But this is also the cap that I used to wear each time we gather offline, in person, in our conventions and Marshall McLuhan meetings, gathering here in Toronto. So now it symbolizes for me that we're still together. So it's kind of weird to wear a cap online in online conference, but it's kind of symbolized to me that we're still together. And also I would refer the analysis of these protests that are going on. Obviously there are a media part of the appearances. So something is predefined or determined by media. What part of it is can be counted on media? In my understanding, what is going on, this protest, this another turn, another wave of rebellion of network agenda against institutional agenda. So in my understanding, social media facilitated the protest for the first time when it was Occupy Wall Street movement, Arab Spring, Twitter revolution, and so on. So the idea was that network engaging agenda allowed people to picture the world in their own way. An institutional agenda, it's always broadcasted from up to down. It's always institutionally based. It's always peddled by the mainstream media, by the elites, and so on. So we have kind of morphological clash between the cloud and the pyramid, between networked society and institutional society, between engaging agenda and broadcasting agenda. The second wave of this clash was Trump's victory and Brexit and victory of Bolsonaro in Brazil, kind of grassroots rebellion that used networked engaging agenda. And now we deal with the third wave of its social media facilitated protests. We are yet to learn what exactly is on media is because of media and what exactly is because of political situation. But obviously, this hasn't happened if not social media. If some evidences hadn't been
yeah, we had a few
Yeah.
glitches, so we just missed a few words. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now I'm back. So this is just my thought to put some occurrences, some ongoing events in historical.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Let's move on. David, what's your final remarks for tonight's Monday Night Webinars? And again, so what's on your mind? So remember the idea of retrieving, right? So the uncertainty of our thoughts to make sense and look at the future. So what's on your mind as a final remarks, David?
I was just thinking about the quotation of breakdown being breakthrough, which you said in your notes to us as speakers, where it was
Here we are. I have it.
Yeah.
a pivotal one. I was thinking that it's not currently it's not so much a breakdown, whatever that means. What is it that's breaking down, and why do you call it a breakdown? You wouldn't call the emancipation of slavery a breakdown. You would call it, a very necessary turn of events, or you wouldn't say dealing with the smoking issue worldwide, the tobacco issue worldwide, influencing it or reducing it not as an institutionalized problem, as a breakdown. And so what's I'm one of these people who think that the speed of things that have been occurring, especially in the business world, and especially in the ICT world, where things happen so fast and the speed at which they're happening bears no relationship to human beings and how they really live and what really matters to them. This is a not sustainable reality. So instead of breakdown, I would say it's a breakup. And what you're seeing people doing now in response to the George Floyd reality, it's more than a George Floyd reality. It is a generation of people saying, we're breaking up with the system. It's a little bit like what we thought in the 60s, when we said, we're against establishment, we're going to put on grandpa's overalls and get back to the land, that sort of move. There is a certain aspect to it, but it's less a breakdown as a breakup. And it's not less a breakthrough, whatever that means, as a break. Well, that's a break in the sense putting on the brakes. So we've been on speed, for the last half of the 20th century, and we're suddenly putting on the brakes. And I think it's a very, very helpful sign. And I think we all know, I think in this group of interested people, that the impact of the technology of electronic media is partly and substantially responsible for the reality that's emerging.
Well, I like the idea. I like to say that the lockdown equals a slowdown. So we needed to slow down, right? So people like me, always running left and right and so on, finally had the opportunity for slowing down and readjust, reframe a kind of attitude, right, in terms of the pace of our modern life. So I like your ideas, David. Thank you. So Beatriz, what's going on? Final merry-go-rounds, your final remarks, Beatriz.
Oh, I would have so many things to say, but I think I'm going to finish with the same quote, I guess, that Dave just brought up. Breakdown is breakthrough. Because it was interesting because he called attention to the idea of breaking as just like breaking something like a car, just stopping and rethinking what we have been doing. And I thought about it in terms of breaking with the structure, breaking with the things that we have now that are not very interesting for us as a society. So I thought about the idea of the importance of breaking things in order for us to try to fix them. So it's not in a very optimistic way of saying, oh, we needed this to change, or we needed this so that we can have a better society from now on. I'm not that optimistic, but I think as soon as we're broken, and I feel very broken for so many people, I think we have to use this opportunity of being broken to try to fix the things that we do not agree with. I think that's something to think about. Breaking as also trying to find a way to fix things from this.
Yeah, great. Oh, thank you, Beatriz. And I was just I wanted to share talking about how important it is to keep exploring and questioning. And the idea of a web blog, lots of work. Clinton is sharing a new explorations blog, which is actually a new exploration journal. It's an academic journal. It's called the New Explorations. There is a web blog for that journal, newexplorations.net. And I think it's another kind of way to foster dialogue and connections, foster spread of ideas, contagious ideas in this actual moment. So great. And Clinton as a pun, lockdown as a clock down. So that's another variation. Well said, Clinton. Thank you. And so, final merry-go-round, Richard, your turn. Final remarks for tonight's Monday night webinar. So you finally are back into the McLuhan's community. So what's your final take, final word for us?
Yeah, I think about your other quote about the future is not, what is that? I forget, not what it used to be.
The future is not what it used to be.
And I would talk about that quote because I think I have some hope and optimism about where we're going. I think we need to realize we are at a potential turning point, possibly towards a more just and less violent and society with a more equal distribution of resources. But we are equally at a turning point that could lead us to a crackdown of the state on individuals and actually a kind of ultimate increase in the kind of injustice and distribution. I'm hoping that's not where we're going, but I do think that we are at a real turning point, so that the future is not what it used to be. In the future, we don't know, really, as Beatriz said very much at the beginning. You really can't tell, but I think something is hanging in the balance. I suppose status quo is a third possibility, but it's hard to see status quo as the future at this point. I think that there's a possible more just future, a possible future where we remake our media. And by media, I don't just mean our communication or media or entertainment media. I mean our media of government and our media of working with the environment. I mean, all of these kinds of technologies, our media. And, we haven't talked about climate change here because people have kind of forgotten about climate change. But that's another potential future that doesn't look like what it used to be. So I guess I am somewhat optimistic because I guess I'm just maybe optimistic is the wrong word. I'm encouraged by the collectivity that we've seen on the streets. Mm-hmm. And those people on the streets, some of them do, as Beatriz said, only have cell phones. But on the streets, it's a different story. And that's moved towards, and that spectacle on the streets that people are able to see in whatever media they have is moving us towards the possibility of something really better. But I think we are also at risk for the opposite because we've seen even the imposition of quarantine was an exercise of the muscle of government, of the state. Can we do this? Can we get away with this? Can we shut businesses down? And they could. Yes. And in a way, I think we're at a similar moment in regard to curfews in response to protests and even in response to a kind of violent crackdown. So breakdown might be a crackdown for another pun. So that's, I guess, all I wanted to emphasize. I don't know where we're going either, but I really feel we are at a turning point, and it's hard to know still where that's what that future will look like.
The future is the present, said Marshall McLuhan.
Yeah.
The future is the present.
Yeah.
And there is a comment from Clinton. There's a 1 million the microcomputer. Remember Rashko's book, Program or Be Programmed. So it's time to really reflect on these topics. And talking about the future, we don't just want a future, we want a just future, Sal. And so here we are to build a more equitable, open future. So rather than just to try to predict the future, we started talking about futurologism, right? The idea of a future, rather than predicting the future, we can cast a future. We can create the future we want, right? So this is, I think, a sign of hope for making sense of this state of isolation. So slowing down, reflecting on what kind of future we want, what kind of future we want to create, right? So it's impossible to predict the future, as you say. It's impossible. We didn't expect everything it's happening right now. So we didn't, nobody could really predict this pandemic. It was an unintended, unexpected consequence of our modern life. It was unexpected. And to make sense of this uncertainty, I think we should reflect on what kind of future we want to build, rather than predicting. We create the future, right? Okay, my friends. I
Good
think
job, Paolo.
I think we are all
Nice.
done. I wanted to wrap up with a nice message of hope and again, togetherness. I really believe that togetherness is such a thing we have to rediscover. And in fact, let me just taking advantage for another announcement about the actual Global Village Day. So Global Village Day, it will be an international celebration of this sense of togetherness. And so what else? It's 10 p.m. We had a very nice conversation. We had a nice gathering, a nice, we had a sense of togetherness. So I'm so impressed. And so let me thank you once again. I will be start by the closest. Andrew,
Thank you.
Miroshnichenko, David Nostbakken, Richard Grusin, and Beatriz Polivanov. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paolo.
Thank you all
Thank
my
you,
folks at home. Thank you folks on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks the panelists. Thank you folks. We see next Monday night webinars, of course, June 15th. And have a good night. Stay safe. Stay sage. Buonanotte.
Boa
Bye.
noite.
Thank you. Boa noite.
Boa noite.